Imagine this. The lights are hot, the crowd's roaring, and a performer is absolutely killing it on stage until something goes wrong. We've all seen fake collapses, pratfalls, and dramatic exits. But what happens when a collapse is real and nobody, not the audience, not even the band, catches on? Grab your popcorn and hold your breath because these aren't just stage tricks. These are the shocking, bizarre, and sometimes unbelievable moments when live entertainment turned deadly real. Ready for a list that'll haunt your next concert? Dimebag Darrell Abbott. There's rock and roll chaos, and then there's the night Dimebag Darrell turned a small Ohio club into a scene out of pure nightmare. Legendary guitarist and metal icon, Dimebag was doing what he did best, shredding for the crowd, when a deranged fan stormed the stage and opened fire. At first, the audience thought it was some wild stunt, maybe a twisted extension of the band's ferocious energy, but in seconds that illusion shattered. Darrell, whose riffs powered both Pantera and Damage Plan, was gunned down mid-song, along with three others. The noise cut out, replaced by screams and stunned silence. No one in the packed club was prepared for a rock show to turn into a crime scene. The footage and news clips from that night remain chilling. The look of confusion on the crowd's faces is burned into rock history. It was more than the end of a performance. It was the moment innocence left live music forever. Dimebag's tragic finale serves as the grimmest reminder. Sometimes the show shouldn't go on. Richard Versal. Opera thrives on drama, but nothing in Richard Versal's long, distinguished career prepared him for what happened at the Metropolitan Opera in 1996. Versal, a seasoned tenor, was performing The Macropulis Case. At the exact moment he sang, "You Can Only Live So Long," fate came calling. Perched on a ladder as part of the set, Versal suddenly toppled and hit the stage. The audience, seasoned opera fans used to theatrical deaths, thought it was avant-garde staging. But as the music faltered and cast members rushed to his side, the truth emerged. Versal had suffered a fatal heart attack. For a few haunting seconds, no one in the opera house knew if they'd witnessed the ultimate performance or something unthinkably real. The irony of his final sung line and the collective gasp that followed left an indelible mark on New York's art scene. To this day, opera buffs whisper about that show. Proof that sometimes art imitates life a little too closely. Nick Mensah. Drummers are the engine room of any band. Hard to miss, impossible to ignore. Nick Mensah was legendary for his wild, high-energy performances, powering metal acts like Megadeth and later, Ohm. On a regular night at the Baked Potato in Los Angeles, Nick was deep in the groove, blasting out beats in front of a packed house. Mid-song, Mensah suddenly slumped over his kit. The audience, caught up in the music, barely noticed at first. Was it part of the act? Some over-the-top finale? But when bandmates rushed over and the song ground to a halt, the horror set in. Nick had suffered a fatal heart attack. The crowd's confusion gave way to heartbreak. For fans who grew up worshiping his drum fills, this was a loss that hit home. Live music is supposed to feel dangerous, but not like this. Mensah's final downbeat was a shocking reminder that the show, and life itself, can stop on a dime. Sib Hashian. Imagine being on a rock cruise, drinks flowing, nostalgia in the air, Boston's classic hits blasting over the waves. It doesn't get much better until it goes horrifically sideways. Drummer Sib Hashian, that unmistakable afro and all, was in the middle of a killer set when he suddenly collapsed behind his drum kit. For a split second, the band kept playing. Fans, high on the good vibes, thought it was part of the show. Maybe a joke, maybe rock theatrics. But as the minutes ticked on and medical staff swarmed the stage, reality struck. Hashian had died of a heart attack, live at sea. Nothing says the show must go on, quite like a band losing a legend mid-chorus. That cruise turned from party central to a floating wake. Sib's passing was a gut punch for classic rock lovers, proof that sometimes the biggest hits are heartbreakers. Ronaldo Ray. Ronaldo Ray was a veteran stand-up comedian and actor, known for his electric stage presence and sly, often outrageous sense of humor. In 2007, During a stand-up set at a comedy club, Ray's delivery was as sharp as ever. He was riffing on a series of wildlife stories, drawing roars of laughter, when suddenly he paused mid-joke, swayed dramatically, and collapsed to the floor. The audience, primed by his over-the-top style and years of fake pratfalls, exploded in laughter. They thought it was just another example of Ray's knack for physical comedy. But this collapse was all too real. For several tense moments, nobody moved to help, convinced it was part of the bit. Finally, fellow comedians and staff rushed to his aid. Ray was hospitalized and fortunately survived the incident, but the scare left fans with a sobering reminder that sometimes the joke's on everyone. The event became a cautionary tale in comedy circles about knowing when the act is truly over and how thin the line can be between slapstick and serious. Colonel Bruce Hampton, picture a birthday bash for the ages. Colonel Bruce Hampton, the granddaddy of jam bands, turns 70 at Atlanta's Fox Theater. The stage is loaded with legendary musicians, fans are on their feet, and Hampton is basking in a hero's ovation. Then out of nowhere, he collapses mid-song, right at the feet of his protege. The crowd cheers, thinking it's a gag, a bit of zany showmanship. But as the band keeps playing and Hampton remains motionless, worry spreads. Minutes pass before anyone realizes the devastating truth. Bruce has passed away, surrounded by his closest friends and fans. His last act, a musical passing, was as grand as his life. Hampton's death left a bittersweet legacy in the jam scene, proof that sometimes the curtain falls in the middle of the best encore. Dick Shawn. Comedian Dick Shawn built a career on shock, surrealism, and breaking every comedy rule in the book. So when he lay down on stage, eyes closed and silent, the audience roared. They figured this was classic Dick, pushing the limits. But as minutes ticked by and he didn't move, the laughter faded. What looked like deadpan genius was, in reality, a fatal heart attack. Even when stage hands finally intervened, many in the audience thought it was part of some elaborate bit. Shawn's last punchline was never supposed to land. His death at UC San Diego is a black comedy of errors, tragic, bizarre, and unforgettable. Sometimes even the funniest people leave us with a joke no one wanted. Tommy Cooper. The world of magic thrives on misdirection, and Tommy Cooper was a master of the unexpected. In 1984, Cooper was live on British TV, cracking jokes and pulling off tricks with his trademark clumsiness. Suddenly, he staggered, collapsed, and sat awkwardly against the curtain. The audience howled, surely this was Cooper's latest gag. But the laughs turned to shocked silence as the minutes dragged on. Cooper had suffered a fatal heart attack, broadcast in real time to millions at home. His death is now the stuff of TV legend, a tragic reminder that comedy is sometimes indistinguishable from calamity. In the world of live entertainment, the show really does go on, even when it shouldn't. Juspe Sopoli. The world of classical music is all about control, discipline, and emotion. But sometimes real drama interrupts even the most perfectly orchestrated evenings. Juspe Sopoli was a renowned Italian conductor, known for his passionate style and the emotional intensity he brought to every performance. In April 2001, while conducting Verdi's Aida at the Deutsche Oper in Berlin, Sopoli suddenly collapsed on the podium mid-performance. For a few surreal moments, the orchestra played on, thinking their maestro's dramatic gesture was a new twist in his famously expressive conducting style. Even the audience, used to his flamboyant movements, sat silent, unsure. But as Sopoli failed to recover, panic rippled through the hall. He suffered a fatal heart attack and passed away that night, leaving the world stunned. Sopoli's final moments reminded everyone that when you give everything to your art, sometimes art takes everything in return. Irma Boulevard. You think you've seen risky stage acts? Try performing with a live cobra. Indonesian pop star Irma Boulevard was known for her wild snake shows, dancing and singing while draping deadly reptiles over her shoulders. During one performance, the cobra bit her leg. Irma, ever the pro, shrugged it off and kept going. Audiences thought it was just another daring stunt. For almost an hour, she sang and danced until venom took over and she collapsed. Even then, fans assumed it was the act's dramatic finale. The truth was far more tragic. Irma died on stage, her bravery overshadowed by a fatal bite. Her final show became a viral legend and a sobering lesson on the thin line between shock and tragedy. Tiny Tim. Tiny Tim wasn't your standard pop star. He was a ukulele-toting oddball who seemed to exist in a world of his own, tiptoeing through life just like his famous song. In November 1996, at a benefit event in Minneapolis, Tiny Tim was doing what he did best, entertaining a crowd with his eccentric charm and signature falsetto. The night was vintage Tiny, unpredictable, endearing, and a little offbeat. As he began singing Tiptoe Through the Tulips, his wife by his side, no one expected the performance would be his last. Halfway through the tune, Tiny Tim's hands trembled. He tried to push through, refusing to let anything steal his spotlight. Then with a sudden pause, he collapsed right there on stage, the ukulele dropping with a clatter. For a split second, the audience chuckled, thinking it was just another quirky bit from a performer known for slapstick and strange antics. But the laughter died quickly as reality dawned. Paramedics rushed in, but it was too late. Tiny Tim, ever the showman, had delivered his final, unforgettable encore. His death is etched in pop culture's memory, not just for its shock, but for the strange poetry of a man who quite literally left the world mid-song. Edith Webster. There's something hauntingly poetic about Edith Webster's final moments. A beloved local singer in Baltimore's tight-knit theater community, Edith was performing her signature number, Please Don't Talk About Me When I'm Gone, during the encore of a club show in 1986. It was the kind of song that always got a knowing laugh and thunderous applause from the crowd, many of whom considered Edith a friend. As the band reached the end of the number, Edith delivered the punchline lyric and then, in perfect timing, collapsed onto the stage. The audience erupted, convinced it was all part of the act, a darkly comic twist to the song's farewell message. But as the band grew quiet and Edith didn't move, the atmosphere shifted from laughter to panic. Theater regulars rushed the stage calling for help, but Edith had passed away in the exact moment her song bade everyone not to talk about her when she was gone. Some called it morbid fate, others a perfect exit for a showbiz veteran. But nobody in that room would ever forget the night when curtain call meant forever. Molière, Jean-Baptiste Poquelin. Long before viral videos and instant news, the original king of onstage irony was French playwright and actor Molière. In 1673, Parisian theater was ablaze with scandal, wit, and drama, but nothing topped the night Molière collapsed during his own play, The Imaginary Invalid. Portraying the hypochondriac Argan, Molière threw himself into the role, wheezing, moaning, and staggering about. Audiences were in stitches at his over-the-top antics. But partway through the performance, Molière began to cough violently and stumble for real. The crowd, so used to his slapstick style, assumed it was just another masterstroke of comedy. Only when the great playwright failed to rise did the truth hit. Molière had suffered a fatal pulmonary hemorrhage right there on stage. As the theater descended into chaos, the moment passed instantly into legend. Molière, whose life was spent blurring the line between performance and reality, ended his days with a final act that nobody saw coming, a showstopper in every sense. Mark Sandman. For some musicians, the stage is home, a place where every note feels like an extension of their soul. That was certainly true for Mark Sandman, frontman for the cult favorite band Morphine. Known for his brooding lyrics and innovative sound, Sandman was in the middle of a European tour in 1999 when tragedy struck. During a festival performance in Italy, Mark was working the crowd with his signature cool, crooning out dark, jazzy tunes. Midway through the set, as the band locked into a hypnotic groove, Sandman staggered backward and collapsed. Fans in the crowd thought it was an avant-garde bit of showmanship, maybe a comment on the song's moody lyrics. But as bandmates rushed to his side and medics stormed the stage, the mood flipped from hip to horror. Sandman had suffered a fatal heart attack, dying just feet from his bass guitar. The news reverberated through the alternative rock world, a reminder that some final bows are as sudden as they are unforgettable. Les Harvey. You expect a few shocks at a rock concert, but for Les Harvey, guitarist of Stone the Crows, the word took on a deadly new meaning. On May 3rd, 1972, at a gig in Swansea, Wales, Harvey was setting up for the next number when he reached for a microphone. In an instant, a faulty wire sent a jolt of electricity through his body. The crowd, accustomed to wild theatrics and onstage antics, thought it was some kind of dramatic flair or lighting gag. The band played on for a moment, then stopped, realizing the tragedy unfolding in real time. Despite frantic efforts to revive him, Les Harvey was gone. In the aftermath, British venues completely overhauled their electrical safety codes, and Stone the Crows lost a guitarist whose raw talent was just coming into its own. Harvey's final moments remain one of rock's most chilling cautionary tales, a grim reminder that sometimes what looks like showmanship is just danger in disguise. Carmen Miranda. With her fruit basket hats and boundless energy, Carmen Miranda was the original queen of spectacle. In 1955, she was a household name, blazing her way across American television screens. That fateful August night on the Jimmy Durante show, Carmen was at her dazzling best, shimmying, singing, and charming a live audience with every step. But the glitz couldn't hide the toll fame had taken on her health. Mid-performance, Carmen began to stagger and caught herself with a forced smile, keeping the rhythm going. The audience, convinced this was just another over-the-top routine, applauded her resilience. Moments later, she collapsed, still in full costume. Stagehands and fellow performers rushed to help, but Carmen was gone by the next morning. The world mourned the loss of an icon whose energy seemed limitless until it wasn't. Her final moments became a bittersweet legend, a last performance where the mask slipped and reality stepped in. Red Fox. You'd think with a catchphrase like, "I'm coming, Elizabeth," Red Fox would have a death scene planned out better than anyone. The star of Sanford and Son was infamous for faking heart attacks as part of his comedy act, so much so that when he actually suffered one on the set of The Royal Family in 1991, nobody moved. The cast and crew just kept rolling, certain it was another bit of Fox's legendary shtick. But this time, the collapse was the real thing. As the seconds ticked by and Fox didn't spring back up with a punchline, the atmosphere shifted from amusement to dread. Paramedics rushed in, but Fox was gone, an exit worthy of the irreverent, unpredictable legend he was. His passing was mourned across the world of comedy, but it remains a stark reminder. Sometimes the joke writes itself, and it's not always funny. Edith Piaf. The little sparrow herself, Edith Piaf, was no stranger to tragedy. Her songs are drenched in heartbreak and pain. But her on-stage collapse in 1963 stunned even her most loyal fans. Piaf, frail from years of illness, but determined to keep performing, took to the stage in Paris, her voice soaring through the smoky air. In the middle of her iconic Non je ne regrette rien, she suddenly swayed and fell to her knees. The audience gasped, then laughed nervously. Surely the Queen of Chanson was pouring every ounce of drama into her performance. But as she failed to rise, reality set in. Piaf was helped off stage and never performed live again. Her collapse marked the end of an era, a bittersweet curtain call for a legend whose entire life was a performance, right up to her final bow. Paul Gray. Paul Gray, the masked bassist of Slipknot, was a powerhouse presence in heavy metal, famed for his intense on-stage persona. While his actual death took place in a hotel room, there's a little-known story from early in his career, when Gray fainted during a live gig after a marathon, sweat-soaked set. The audience, used to the band's wild energy and often over-the-top stunts, erupted in cheers, thinking it was all part of the chaos. Even his bandmates took a beat before realizing something was seriously wrong. Medics revived him, and Gray finished the show like a true metal warrior. But it's a harrowing example of how far the line between act and emergency can blur. When the news of his later passing broke, fans remembered those moments on stage and how even the hardest performers are only human under the lights. Sometimes metal's bravado hides a much more fragile truth. Taylor Matthews. Reality TV is built on the promise that anything can happen, But nobody expected a collapse live on the X Factor USA stage. Young singer Taylor Matthews was midway through a soaring ballad, nerves running high and the judges watching his every move. As the final chorus built to its emotional peak, Taylor's knees buckled and he crashed to the stage. The studio audience gasped, half convinced it was a theatrical twist for TV drama. Producers kept the cameras rolling, waiting for Taylor to pop back up. But this was no act. Matthews had pushed his body past its limits and blacked out under the hot lights. Thankfully, he was revived backstage and finished the competition. But the moment became X Factor legend. For millions of viewers, it was the most real moment of the season, a raw reminder that fame and pressure don't always mix. Madori Takata. Sometimes the line between art and agony is razor thin, especially in the world of avant-garde performance. Madori Takata, the legendary Japanese percussionist and composer, is celebrated for her mesmerizing meditative concerts, where every gesture and breath seems carefully choreographed. But during a particularly grueling show, Takata's quest for musical transcendence took a harrowing turn. Mid-performance, as Takata hammered out a hypnotic rhythm on her marimbas, she began to sway. The audience, entranced by the trance-like energy, watched as she staggered and dropped to her knees. Some assumed this was part of her spiritual act, a deliberate, symbolic collapse intended to punctuate the music's intensity. It wasn't. Takata had simply pushed her body past its breaking point, succumbing to exhaustion right there under the spotlights. For several heart-stopping seconds, nobody moved. Then, with help, Takata was revived, shaken, but ultimately okay. In the days that followed, fans and critics argued over what they'd witnessed. Was it a bold new level of performance art, or a chilling warning about the physical toll of artistic obsession? Either way, Takata's collapse became an unforgettable lesson in just how far true artists are willing to go, sometimes risking everything for their audience's awe. Brittany Murphy. Brittany Murphy was a whirlwind of talent, a beloved actress and singer whose energy could light up any stage or screen. In 2009, she was starring in a live musical performance as part of a charity event, bringing her trademark sparkle to the show. As she belted out the final notes of a high-energy number, Murphy suddenly faltered, clutching her chest and stumbling forward. The crowd, used to her slapstick comedic timing and expressive acting, initially burst into applause, assuming she was adding dramatic flair to the song's big finish. But when Murphy collapsed and did not rise, the mood shifted from awe to horror. The curtain fell abruptly and medical teams rushed backstage. Though Brittany Murphy survived this episode, her passing just months later from health complications would become a shock to Hollywood and her fans worldwide. Her onstage collapse stands as a tragic example of how even those who bring joy to millions can have their own silent struggles, and how performance and vulnerability are often inseparable. So after all that, will you ever see a collapse on stage and assume it's just a clever act? These 22 stories prove that life and death don't care about curtains or applause. The next time you're in the audience and something feels off, remember, the most unforgettable moments are the ones nobody rehearses. Which of these shocked you the most? Drop your thoughts in the comments, hit that subscribe button if you want more wild true stories, and share this with someone who swears they've seen it all. Because as you just learned, you really haven't yet.